I saw a small body and I guess it would look like the father and another child. Like the body just wasn't moving.
We are going to be asking the local community, anybody that saw something, to come forward. Definitely there's going to be some witnesses to this collision that are still outstanding.
A 3-year-old boy is dead after a crash in Etobicoke that also injured his father and sister. Police say the family was walking across the street when they were hit. It happened near the East Mall and Burnhamthorpe Road around 11 a.m. Let's go to Greg Ross now live at the scene. Greg, what more can you tell us about the tragedy there?
Well, Dwight, police tell us that it happened just after 11 o'clock this morning. That's when a man and his 2 young kids were trying to cross the street right here, the East Mall, and that's when they were hit by a Ford SUV. Now, I spoke with a nearby resident who lives on Montebello Gardens over there. She told us that she heard a commotion outside her window just moments after the accident.
I just saw an elderly woman standing out on the road and I didn't know what was going on, so I came out to see, and I saw a small body and I guess it would look like the father and another child just kind of over it.
Now, the 3 were all rushed to hospital. We're told that the 3-year-old was pronounced dead a short time later. His older sister, we're told, is in Sick Kids Hospital right now with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The father suffered minor injuries. Now, that elderly woman that she was describing, that was the driver of the Ford SUV. Police tell us that she is in her 80s. They had the East Mall here closed down for several hours after the accident as investigators were trying to piece things together. Now, here is what they are telling us. They believe that that woman was driving northbound here on the East Mall. She turned on to Montebello Gardens over there. She went around the cul-de-sac and was attempting to come out this side to turn left onto the East Mall to go southbound, and that is when she hit the family. Now, the police tell us that they're still trying to piece together some things here. They believe that there were actually people here on scene when it happened and witnessed what happened. They would like to talk to those people.
Anybody with some dash camera, we're going to be speaking to the TTC because we know that their vehicles now have cameras as well. And any eyewitnesses. There was some information from some of the initial 22 division officers that first arrived with fire, that there was some witnesses that were here but have left. We'd like to speak to those people.
At this point, no charges have been laid, but Detective Brett Moore there tells me it could take weeks, maybe even a month, before they are able to determine if any charges need to be laid here, Dwight.
Wow, just 3 years old. Thank you, Greg. We are learning more today about the Toronto Police Board's response to widespread calls to address systemic racism and to defund the police. It released a detailed report today with 80 recommendations, but as Farah Morelli tells us, some advocates say it looks more substantive than it really is.
The bottom line is these represent serious reforms.
It's a report which Mayor John Tory calls ambitious. If approved, he says, it would bring in sweeping changes to policing in the city.
The time for reform is now.
It's a culmination of weeks of virtual town halls with the community and months of protests calling for the police to be defunded. The Toronto Police Services Board report is comprehensive. It's more than 100 pages and makes 80 recommendations, such as implementing a crisis response model that does not depend on police, developing a line-by-line approach to looking at the police budget, advocating at the provincial level for a review of Toronto Police's use of force model, and making anti-black racism training permanent. It focuses a lot on measures to build public confidence.
Black people are more likely to be struck, shot or killed by Toronto police.
Something that was shaken by the findings yesterday by the Ontario Human Rights Commission.
The report promises more than it delivers.
This longtime chair of the board says the pledge to develop an alternate response model for those in mental health crises is vague, with no timelines.
What needed to have happened was a very close, careful look at the whole business of policing. What do we ask police to do? What do we use the uniformed armed police officer to do, and to determine which of those functions are really absolutely essential for the police to perform.
I think this report is missing where the community is at right now.
Others say the report doesn't address problems related to investigating police misconduct.
We have these institutions that we know are supposed to protect us, like the SIU, which is supposed to be the independent investigation board for the police, but we know they don't.
The report will go before the Toronto Police Services Board meeting next week. Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario has reported the fewest number of cases on a single day since March 19th. Just 33 additional cases were reported in the province today. Minister Christine Elliott said that 21 cases were removed from today's total as they were already included in previous daily case counts. Now, is it too hot to be thinking about winter right now? Experts are looking ahead to what the cold weather will bring when it comes to the fight against COVID-19. They are warning that the chilly months will mean new challenges in containing the spread. Here's Lauren Pelly on what we need to be planning now for the cold days ahead.
Apologies for showing you scenes from a Canadian winter in August.
But those months of sub-zero temperatures are just around the corner, and they could bring new challenges in the fight against COVID-19.
This spring and summer, we were told to stay apart and outside as much as possible. That distance and airflow can help curb virus spread. But when the temperature drops, we'll all be crowding back indoors for both work and play.
We need to get back to really encouraging more outdoor life.
That could mean businesses investing in patio heating or cities building more outside activities like skating rinks.
These are the type of things that people that actually live in very cold climates all year round do all the time.
Experts also say cities like Toronto need to help residents isolate safely if they live in cramped quarters and do get sick.
Most of our effort should be placed on those most vulnerable in our populations.
Some places, including Toronto, are already using sites like hotels to house homeless residents and others who can't easily isolate at home. Now, looking ahead, are we planning for when this turns to this?
The answer is yes. This is something that I asked that we begin a month or so ago, and we've traditionally been planning for winter in the month of July.
This year, health officials are also bracing for another challenge, layering COVID-19 on top of the usual cold and flu season.
There's some hope if we play our cards right, we could curb the spread of both. That means the usual public health messaging still applies. Wash your hands, keep your distance, and wear a mask. Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
The TDSB started putting out calls to parents today asking what their intentions are for their kids come September. Will they return to the classroom or continue to learn from home?
We need some of this information yesterday, quite frankly. So we chose for the phone call. Obviously, that's not the only option. If for some reason we can't reach you, there will be an online component that will be sent to those that do not complete the phone survey. But we really are strongly encouraging all of our parents and guardians to complete the survey in whatever form you receive it, so that we can get this very needed information as soon as possible.
The survey comes a day after the school board released their back-to-school plan, including health and safety measures, learning models, and other supports in schools this September. The board also reiterated their concerns about class sizes in elementary grades. As per the province, the current plan calls for children in kindergarten through grade 8 to attend school 5 days a week with one cohort for the full day. The board has called on the Education Ministry to provide funding to reduce class sizes, saying physical distancing will not be possible in many elementary classrooms. It is concerning enough for some parents to keep their children at home.
I just don't foresee a lot of learning taking place in the schools when there's going to be so much concern about children's health and their safety and keeping distance and their bubbles and all that stuff. So it's not the best decision for him at this time.
Last week, the province announced $30 million to hire more staff to decrease elementary class sizes whenever possible. During a news conference today, the Premier said the province won't spare a penny, and if school boards need more than $30 million, they'll get it. The TDSB will hold a webinar on the reopening plan this Thursday at 6:30. The Toronto District Catholic School Board will hold a special meeting this Friday to discuss their return to school plan. CBC Toronto has obtained documents from the government of Ontario about the plan to return public servants to the workplace. The province says the documents are not final and internal discussions are ongoing. Still, though, the documents show big changes are coming for the more than 60,000 provincial employees. But one common COVID safety measure is not mandatory in the draft plan for these employees. Chris Glover now with the exclusive details.
Thank you very much.
Unlike when you work at a TTC stop and you have to be masked up, Ontario public servants who go back into the office will not always be required to wear a mask. We took the plan to an epidemiologist.
They recommend wearing a mask if you cannot socially distance in an elevator. That should be mandatory, I would think. Because elevators are fairly intimate and you can be in there for several minutes at a time, and the airflow is horrible in elevators.
CBC News obtained Ontario's return to the workplace plan that ministries will use to try and finalize their protocols by mid-August. In it, a template for employers for safety measures and an action plan if there is a COVID case.
I look very carefully for their procedures on what to do if someone tests positive. And it's fairly robust. I'm kind of impressed by that.
The documents say where possible, workers should continue to work from home and meet virtually. If workers have to come in, it recommends barriers, shifting schedules, or using outdoor spaces. Around wearing masks, the advice becomes murky, at one point saying where physical distancing is not possible, personal protective equipment will be needed, implying masks are required. But then it says while masks are to be worn in public space, ministry-controlled spaces are not considered public space, and therefore the requirement to wear a mask goes out the window.
To simply say that because a key card allowed you entry, the mask rules no longer apply is a little troubling to me. I think the mask prescription should be across the board in the event of an inability to socially distance.
As maintaining a physical distance is the government's priority, most spaces, including kitchens and mailrooms, will have a one-person limit.
So long as the spacing is enforced, the mask wearing is a little more than highly encouraged, things should be okay.
He hopes even without a requirement, employees will choose to mask up. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
The province will build 320 new long-term care beds in Toronto by the end of 2021.
We remain steadfast in our promise to provide our most vulnerable people with the care they need in a safe and comfortable living space.
The new home will be built at Humber River Hospital's Finch site. The project is part of the province's Accelerated Build pilot program aimed at creating 30,000 new beds across the province over the next decade. It comes after COVID-19 wreaked havoc on the province's long-term care facilities, revealing disturbing living conditions at many sites.
We tragically lost far too many seniors, and many others continue to deal with the lasting effects of COVID-19. Through this new long-term care development, we can address the ongoing need for long-term care in Toronto faster and ensure that our most vulnerable have access to proper supports and services.
According to the province, more than 38,000 people are currently on the wait list to access a long-term care bed. The average wait time in Toronto is just under 200 days. Now, the new rooms will all have air conditioning, something CBC Toronto did numerous stories on last month. Lisa Shing looked at the impact the heat had on residents living in sweltering conditions and questioned the Premier about it. Today, he gave her a shout-out.
You're the reason why we're putting air conditioning throughout the whole province's long-term care. So first of all, thank you, as you played a critical role. You have changed lives. We went through these heat spells. Just imagine sitting in these rooms when it's 100 degrees. I can't even imagine it. So you played a critical role, and I thank you. And I'm so sincere when I say thank you.
We like it when our reporters get kudos from the Premier, and I got to shout out Dana Gorley and our assignment team for their work on that story too. Important work, call it. So
Yes.
yours is too, don't get me wrong.
No, I know, but I heard him say we were going to name the bill after you, Lisa, but then it turned out it's not a bill.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, really, really important work. It certainly is. Having a look, this is what's happening. We're kind of exchanging one air mass for another here. So their current temperatures, they look like this. 28 in Toronto, Oshawa, St. Catharines, Hamilton, a little cooler, and Markham as well, and Kitchener, even cooler still at 25. We still have some humidity. I'm not going to pretend we don't when we're talking about our humidex values in the mid-30s, but Kitchener, again, drop 5 off of that, because as that cold front works its way through, we're going to find those values coming down because those dew points are coming down. So those winds, they're shifting. So we had them coming from the southwest. They're turning to the west to northwest as that new air mass moves in, and it's much drier air. So some active weather that's mostly been well off towards the east, kind of raced through. We did have a few showers, some very quick downpours that moved through, and some cloud cover. But again, that's moving off, and it's over towards eastern Ontario, moving into Quebec as well. We get into this clearing trend overnight tonight. So with that clearing trend, cooler than last night. We were almost at 23 degrees with the overnight low, 16 degrees. Now, tomorrow it's still going to be a warm day, a sunny day. Beautiful Wednesday. The difference is the humidex only 32. That's why it's much more comfortable. So behind that cold front, high pressure builds in. It's going to give us a string of very nice days with the clearer skies, the sunshine during the day, very few clouds, some high-level cirrus there, which are fair weather clouds. So things are going to be looking good, not just Wednesday, but into Thursday, into Friday too. Maybe a little more cloud as we get towards the end of the week, but the humidity stays down. And that's what's really important here. As we go towards the weekend, perhaps as we get towards the end of the weekend, that's when we start to see that getting into a chance of maybe getting some showers coming back our way. But really, we're getting a gift here as this front goes through. We exchange for this new air mass, and I think it's one that folks are really going to like. Comfortable one here, Dwight, that we're looking at.
Sounds like a fair trade to us. Thank you, Colette.
Yes, you're welcome.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. It's hard to stop a train.
The two front runners had both Jamaican and Canadian connections, but he had to pick one. Joe Biden has announced his running mate for November's U.S. presidential election, and it is Kamala Harris. Harris is a U.S. Senator, first elected in 2016, representing California. Before that, she was the state's Attorney General and a district attorney in San Francisco. Harris ran against Biden in the Democratic primaries and clashed with him in a few debates last year. Since dropping out of the race, she has appeared with him at a few online fundraisers. Harris's Canadian connection, well, she went to high school in Montreal, and her mom was a prof at McGill. Congratulations. Russia is now the first country in the world to approve a coronavirus vaccine, but the drug hasn't been through final stage testing. More on the questions over how quickly the vaccine was developed when we come back. Russia is now the first country in the world to approve a coronavirus vaccine. The government has given the go-ahead despite not putting the drug through a final round of testing. Don Ashby has more now from Moscow.
Поподробнее, хотя знаю, что она работает.
Well, President Putin saying this is an important step for the world. Russia registering the first ever coronavirus vaccine, but a controversial moment because Russia has registered this vaccine without even completing the trials. Even though many other countries are much further ahead in those phase 3 trials, Russia has registered it, and that has caused some concerns. The Association of Clinical Trials Organisations here, a major scientific body behind these types of tests, says it has data showing that only 76 people have been tested when tens of thousands should have been by the time it's been registered. They also have concerns that not enough placebo testing has been done or randomised trials, and they say there is a safety concern. More than that, they came out and told us we have nothing to be proud of in Russia. It's more of a moment of shame that the country is willing to demonstrate it will violate common rules, cut corners, just to demand reward. So a scathing assessment from a scientific body, but President Putin told the nation that the tests have been done, it is ready to go further, and also that he's so sure about it that he even tested his own daughter with it. So Russia not holding back, and then of course you get the reaction from the rest of the world.
I can just say that we are in a close contact with the Russian health authorities, and discussions are ongoing with respect to possible WHO pre-qualification of the vaccine. But again, pre-qualification of any vaccine includes the rigorous review and assessment of all required safety and efficacy data.
The US too, I think, sceptical, and of course there will be concerns from Britain, who just a few weeks ago was accusing Russia of trying to hack its vaccine to learn British secrets. But then you get the other side of the world, the likes of the Philippines, who say that they want to be and will be part of mass trials, and they're willing to partner with Russia to try help in production. And today, a website going live saying that Russia has interest now from more than 20 countries, that it will begin production in September, that's next month, and aims to produce more than 200 million doses by the end of 2020. It is calling this the Sputnik vaccine after the famous satellite, and I think just like that satellite that was launched all those years ago, this will be controversial. Half the world will wake up and think this is an exciting moment. For the other half of the world, it's a moment of concern. For CBC News, I'm Dan Ashby in Moscow.
It's been another day of protest in Beirut as the deep anger against Lebanon's corrupt ruling elite continues to boil. Protesters in Beirut are clashing with riot police for another night. At least 171 people died and some 300,000 others are homeless after last week's massive explosion. Survivors say the government's resignation yesterday is meaningless since the same group was asked to act as a caretaker government. Ontario is now providing $2 million to the Canadian Red Cross to support people affected by last week's explosion in Lebanon. The provincial donation comes after the community here in the GTA began fundraising. The Lebanese-Canadian Coalition is one of the new organizations mobilizing support. One of its lead members is Rola Dagger, the president of Cisco Canada. We sat down this week for a wide-ranging interview, from being a refugee herself to running a billion-dollar corporation. We'll have that for you over the next few days. Here's what she had to say about starting a movement of support for the land of her birth.
I started making calls. I picked up the phone and I called about 10 Lebanese leaders that I know and 10 Lebanese people, and I said, we can't be sitting here and just watching the news. I said, we're blessed for being in a country like Canada that is safe, but it's our job and our duty to give back to our community. And I said, we need to start the conversation.
And that they did. More of our conversation this week on CBC Toronto News at 6. When we return, talk about a nerve-wracking step. We speak to this couple who made the leap into marriage on the edge of the CN Tower. Beautiful. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
It was just a few hours after we got married. So this year, 2020, has been so crazy with everything that has happened. What better way than to celebrate it in a very crazy way than to do the edge walk and conquer our fears.
Yeah.
We got married on August 8th. That was the original date we planned to get married. It's an auspicious date in our culture, but due to COVID-19, we had to change our plans drastically.
Good evening, Toronto. It is August 8th.
We still got married, but we had a
smaller wedding.
Yeah, smaller COVID micro wedding.
Renee had a really nice surprise to make the day still really big and still really fun by doing something pretty crazy, which is going on an edge walk. And the cool thing is we actually got to wear suits that were a bride suit and a groom suit. We're all in this together.
Love will still prevail. It's just things are going to be a little bit different.
That was great. Congratulations to Jason and Renee. That is it for us tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Let's take you live now to Edmonton. Game 1 of the Flames and Stars first round series starts next.